This is Alberta to Arizona. I'm Tracie Gray, the host today, and then I am here with Devin Gray in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, talking about real estate. Devin's a professional real estate agent with EXP, and then also with Mogul RG. Realty group. And then we've got Diane down in the States. Diane's also a professional real estate agent with Coldwell Banker, and she's down in the beautiful Phoenix, Scottsdale area of Arizona, talking about the difference between buying and selling real estate in Canada and the United States. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
we're experiencing one of our 3 gray days that we get in Arizona.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
actually the sun out today.
Oh, in Edmonton it is. Oh, good. What's your
Well, we
temperature?
do, but I was
Yeah.
saying in Phoenix, it's actually gray out. That's
Yeah,
surprising.
yeah, the one of 3 days. So we've kind of switched
Wow.
and stuff. We're still like 100 degrees though, and it's end of September.
Oh, yeah. So we stole your sun, but you've got our heat because it's very cold here today.
Is it? Okay.
It's getting there. It's getting
Another
warm.
another reason to buy in Arizona. You could just be
Yeah,
there and
it's
it'd
the
be,
last
It's
day of
fall.
summer.
yeah.
Yeah.
Last day of summer because it's 7 something tonight. It turns to fall. So
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
darn it,
Yes.
our summer's over. But our summer was beautiful, so we can't complain weather-wise that way.
You could
Yeah.
always fly down here, buy property here so that
That's
you could
right. Yeah,
always
good time to go visit Diane.
always have the sunshine for sure.
Yes. This is exactly when people are going to start to perk up and say, I don't want to spend another winter here
That's
in
right.
cold northerly Canada. So let's
Yeah.
take a look at the southern states.
And especially when I remember when it was so bitterly cold in Edmonton, I wanted to buy a billboard that said you could be here and get my number, put my number down there to kind of encourage people to buy down here and stuff.
Have people shake their fist at the billboard.
Yeah.
I do want to be there. I do.
You could be here too. I still might do that one year. Who knows?
It probably would do well.
Yeah.
How is the market these days down there? Are you still trending? We talked last time we spoke. We're certainly in a buyer's market again. You'd mentioned more that it's balanced down there. Is it?
Yeah. Oh, well, it was that week, and then how quickly the balance market changes.
It does go quick.
So our listings have kind of leveled off. They're not coming on in droves again, but we're finding that a lot of list prices are dropping a little bit. So, overall we're up, but we are one of the fastest in the nation to see sellers kind of decrease, have some list price cuts and stuff. So we're kind of seeing where everything falls. Interest rates, buyers are still a little bit nervous. Sellers are offering, to give a credit of money to help them buy their interest rate down to make it more advantageous. So it's interesting to see here. And in Edmonton, you guys are in a bit of a lull as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's 25% of the population, maybe around that amount is pretty much in the Toronto greater Golden Horseshoe area, and then obviously in the lower mainland of Vancouver. Those are the two markets where the average price for a home, I believe in Vancouver, is 1.1 million. In Toronto, it's 1.2 million. And so when there's articles written about those two areas, a lot of people take it as that's what's happening everywhere. And of course, as we all know or should know, real estate is very local. It's not a national situation. But in some situations, like Bank of Canada changing interest rates to slow the mortgage or slow the market down, it affects everyone. But we're hearing about price percentage drops of 20 and 25% in Toronto area and Vancouver area, which sounds significant, but when the real estate market went up 40% over the course of the past 2 to 3 years, 20 to 25% drop doesn't necessarily seem as extreme as if you don't add that 40% rise. However, what's happening is some people are also thinking that that's happening in other markets that never really had those kind of increases. And so we're not experiencing that by any stretch in Alberta. Yes, prices are softening, but they're softening, in a much slower pace. What continues to happen is that, interest rates have now gone up 5 times. The last interest rate that took place a couple of weeks ago or a week ago was 0.75%. It's just the magnitude and how fast it's going up. The latest talk is that it could be a full percentage point the next time. And so, lenders are changing their practices. Buyers are struggling to decide whether or not they should buy now because prices are going down, or wait. But the problem is that interest rates are going up. And then some lenders are also becoming a little more stringent in regards to what the qualifications are. They're asking for a few extra things. And I have had a couple of buyers that have been forced to wait for 5 or 6 months based on not enough down payment or various other things. Maybe they started a new job 6 months ago, and a year ago that would have been okay, but now they're saying, you know what, we really want to see you at that job for a full year before we're prepared to lend you money. So there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of instability, and that's obviously causing a lot of buyers to also wait on the sidelines, which is basically what's causing prices to fall. Because we're having lots of conversations with sellers about the fact that it's not what happened in this market 3 months ago. It's taking a look at who are the 3 or 4 other properties in your community that are trying to sell, and are you priced 2 or 3% lower so that you're perceived as the best deal. And sometimes there is a bit of a race to the bottom because your listing might lower the price, and then a week later you see that the competitor who's probably getting the same advice, they've now lowered their price. And the last thing is buyers are certainly aggressive. They're really demanding low prices, extra long condition periods, those types of things. So it's been an interesting fall so far. I'd say the only other thing to add to that's positive is that, as expected, when school gets back in and everybody gets back into some sort of a bit of a routine, even people that don't have kids and stuff like that, they still might get into their weekly hockey games again, or their weekly music lessons or whatever. And so as that routine starts to take root again, it also gives people a chance to be more focused on, what real estate transaction do they want to do over the course of the next 2.5 months before Christmas in regards to buying or selling. So that's where we're at in the Canadian and Alberta and Edmonton market.
How are your investors? Are your investors excited now that prices are softening? Are they taking advantage of that?
Yeah, so there is, you can read it in multiple books. In times of uncertainty and instability, it's a great time to invest. And one of the things that the term that I've heard, it actually came from Ron LeGrand, who's a U.S. investor guru down there. He calls it a wraparound mortgage down in the U.S. The term in Canada is an agreement for sale. It's a form of seller financing, and it basically means that the seller retains legal interest in the property, meaning that the mortgage stays in the seller's name, but the buyer takes over beneficial interest, meaning they have the controlling interest and are responsible for all the expenses. And so the benefit of doing that is that if someone's got a low mortgage rate, and so you take a look at people that have signed up for mortgages in the last 2 years, they'll have like a 1.6% mortgage rate over 5 years. They might still have 3.5 years left on it. Well, the agreement for sale means that there is an agreement to sell that property sometime in the future, and that's going to coincide with that mortgage renewal. So right now, investors are gearing up to be talking to people that have these juicy 1.6, 1.7% mortgage interest rates that are fixed for the next, say, 3.5 years. And going and purchasing those properties with the financing already in place, and would stay with that seller, with the idea being that they would then have 3.5 years to get their financing in place to then purchase that property in the future.
And how are the investors knowing about these terms? So is that advertised on the MLS in Edmonton that we have?
It's not a well-known, it's not very well known. It really does take, it's for anybody to do, but it's really a tool for investors. It's a lot of investors that have I already know about it, or they've heard something about it. If you go on social media, you can see it.
But to find those properties where that's the low interest rate, because that's not, how do you investigate that for your client?
It would be conversations that we would have to have with sellers.
Okay, so
as you're sitting down, you say, "Hey, have you considered agreement for sale?" And they would say, "What the heck is that?"
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But so it would be a person who's selling the property already. You would the agent would contact the seller and say, what are your terms? And then here's an option. Okay, understood.
Yeah, difficult to introduce after the fact. I'd say probably 95% of real estate agents around the world have never heard of these types of tools. The tool itself has been around in Canada. It's been around since the 1940s. That's when it was first used. Back then, you had to have 50% down payment. Excuse me. And so a house might have only been $5,000, but in the 1940s, who had $2,500? So they would buy maybe with $500 down, and by way of agreement for sale over, say, the course of the next 2 or 3 years, knowing that they had that extra amount of time, so they could get into the house and then pay that person. Obviously, one of the biggest challenges that a seller has is the fact that they might have to wait for some of their equity to be paid out. Mm-hmm. So if anybody isn't interested in that, which a lot of people are, not interested in that, they're going to say no. So if you talk to 100 sellers, you might find one or two that would actually be interested in doing that. But it is possible. We see and hear and help to structure many agreements for sales. Usually, and a lot of times, the seller is actually an investor. They get it, they understand it. An average homeowner, quite honestly, thinks it's a scam. Just because it's, the uneducated person will automatically go towards that type of thing. How come my realtor doesn't know about it? Well, your realtor's not investor focused. Your realtor is just interested in that. So anyways, on our Mogul Mastermind event, which always happens at the last Wednesday of every month, so next Wednesday, September 28th, it's our Mogul Mastermind is on agreements for sale. We have our power team member, lawyer Barry McGuire, who actually teaches a course twice a year doing it, or presenting from the legal standpoint that it is a legit thing. And then we also have somebody that is an investor that pretty much that's his primary focus. I think over the 8 years he's been an investor, he's probably done 15 agreements for sale, because it's not something necessarily that you work on or can find. It's not like low-hanging fruit. And a lot of times you'll find somebody and it might take a while for them to understand. There has to be
an education process. Yeah.
Education process, and then also, but also just that pain of getting rid of that, the biggest stress of like, I can't afford another mortgage payment. Yeah. I really need to get rid of this property, but maybe the house isn't necessarily going to provide the equity that you need to sell it traditionally through an MLS system or something like that. Agreement for sale is just another option and another tool, and it's not for everybody.
And so that's a great news for sellers that can't sell. It's an option, that are stressed, as you say. So if somebody is watching this, 2 months from now, and they missed the September 28th thing, is there a recording of it? They can contact you and you can send them the recordings.
Thank you for bringing that up. We actually record every single Mogul Mastermind. We've done Mogul Masterminds for 6 or 7 years. They're on our YouTube channel. So just type in Edmonton Mogul Mastermind.
We'll contact Devin first. That's what we want.
Contact
Devin first.
You have to go through me. You can't just find it on YouTube.
Right.
You
have to Devin. He'll send you the link.
You have to come through.
And how do they get a hold of you? I know we do it at the end of the show and they're in the show notes, but I know that people are so interested. They want to get the information now. So how do they contact you?
Well, you can find me on Facebook.
I should be your agent.
Yes, you should. Yes. Yeah. Well, come on up. The weather's great up here in the wintertime.
His manager, his agent, his co-host.
So just call me at 780-951-9279. Further to that, Diane, and I did want to bring this up because it is something as well for anybody that's interested in investing. There are a lot of investors that are interested in making moves. They recognize that it's a good opportunity here. And so 2 weekends ago from when we're recording this, I was actually in Vancouver for an annual event called Land Rush, which is put on by a real estate industry famous investor named Ozzie Jurek, who is the organizer and host of and owner of the Real Estate Action Group, which is about a 30-year investor organization in Vancouver. And they hold this land rush where 350 to 400 people come to a hotel, and all day people make presentations about where to invest. So there was a realtor talking about Vancouver. We were there talking about Edmonton. And there certainly was the other organizer of REAG named Ralph Case, who talked a lot about how they are investing a lot in the States. And he talked about how there's thousands of people that are moving out of areas like New York and Chicago and stuff like that, and they're moving to Florida and Dallas and Arizona. And so there was a lot of talk about the fact that Arizona right now is very fertile ground for great opportunities to invest from an investment standpoint. I know we talk a lot about people coming to buy as a second home, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the ability to not necessarily buy a property to go down there as a vacation home, but to actually purchase as an investment property, because I think a lot of investors that we deal with don't necessarily think about crossing over the border. And I know you've dealt with people in the past on actually selling as an investment.
Yeah, we have a ton of foreign investors that actually, purchase here to rent out. So it's a great investment. What I'm interested in is introducing my American clients to invest in Canada because of our dollar. Our US
Right,
dollar it's 70 cents American for $1 Canadian. So I would be interested in getting the American people to look at an option of investing in Canada. So we should do that for a future show and definitely look at the tax implications, because you can buy a lot more. I know that prices might be a little bit higher, but if the rental markets are strong, then, I think that's definitely interesting. I think more Canadians look at the US for investment than vice versa. So I think it's an excellent opportunity for Americans to invest. But Arizona is always great for investment for sure. A lot of foreign buyers. It's easy. We can guide you through the process. You're going to be paying taxes depending on the price range, which our prices have increased. So there's a little bit of a holdback when you sell a property for taxes, and it's actually the onus is on the buyer to make sure that the taxes are paid, and the IRS will, or the title company will hold back for taxes, as will the IRS. And then you'll also have your gains on Canadian taxes. But I'd love to tackle opportunities for Americans to buy in Edmonton and talk about, maybe we'll do that next week, talk about the strength in the
We
rental
mentioned
market.
our colder temperatures. That makes it a good time to get deals right now too, because people do go, I want to move to where Diane is and where it's nice and warm every day. And so then the prices and everything right now is a good time for investors to look at both sides of the border, to look down in the States right now with you, Diane, because what's happening with the market here, and then also we're going into our winter, so a lot of people do want to skedaddle.
Yeah. And I would advise, if someone's looking to invest in Arizona, we're kind of in a waiting period from an investment point. I mean, if people have to purchase to live, that's one thing. But if you're an investor and you've got the time, everyone's kind of watching to see what happens with prices. So you don't want to pull the trigger too quickly. If you're in need of shelter and have to buy, absolutely. You know what I mean? You can, marry the house and date the rate down here where you can refinance. So if it's important to get shelter and a home and get out of renting, then absolutely. If you've got a little bit of flexibility as an investor, then, and if you have time to see kind of where things land, that's always a good idea too.
Yeah, thank you very much. To be honest, I'm sitting here going, I never even considered thinking that a U.S. Citizen would consider coming up to Canada. I'm sure it happens all the time, but we're certainly embedded in, telling Canadians elsewhere to invest. I would love to talk about that. Certainly, I can definitely dig into talking to a taxation person about the ramifications of what happens if a U.S. person comes. Because it would be a great topic. We'd love to do it.
Yeah, and I have a cross-border tax accountant too that
Perfect.
I can put you in touch with too, so they can talk about that. So good stuff. See, we just teased the next show. We're doing great.
Yeah, perfect timing to wrap up. So Diane, we already talked about how to get a hold of Devin. How do they get a hold of you if they have more questions, maybe about the taxation and that they can't wait?
Yeah, absolutely. My email is can'trememberheremail@gmail.com. My phone number is 602-620-2277. My website is thatrealestateshow.com, and we'll have that in the show notes too. So I don't think we got your email, Dev.
Email is Devin, DEVIN, @mogulrg.com.
And you can watch Tracie Gray on
right.
Global TV.
And on Chorus Radio. I'm on 6:30 Ched tomorrow from 9 in the morning till 7 tomorrow night. So that's a long one, but broadcasting on TV and radio.
And if you're watching this 2 months from now, Tracie's all over Edmonton all the time. So you'll be able to see her.
That's right.
You can follow you at your social media too, so that, to know what you're
Can't
doing.
escape me. I'm everywhere.
Yeah. What's your Instagram IG though?
It's Tracie.comedy, and Tracie is spelled with an IE. Tracie.comedy on Instagram. So you can find
Perfect.
it. Super easy. All right, great. So that's our show for this week. Thanks for joining us. We've already teased the next show, so you know what's coming. We hope that you'll join us then too. Thanks for watching. This is Alberta to Arizona.